Hi, everyone. This is Torrie Behrens, and we are going to start our next webinar. We are on the site module today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today as we discuss our site module. I am Torrie Behrens. I'm the Director of Customer Success, and I'm going to be leading the webinar today. And Andrea Green is going to be joining me for the questions and answer session. Today's topic is great, and it's a module in ENFOS I know you are already using, but I know you can get more potential out of this module. So today we're going to spend time discussing the great sections and submodules under our site module. I know you're going to see something new today, and hopefully you'll find a way to use these new things in context with everything else you're already using in ENFOS. So this webinar is being recorded, and you're going to receive the webinar after today's session. We have 1 hour, but in reality, it might be 1 day or even 2 days after today's session. Everyone is in listen-only mode, but as I mentioned, we have our team here and available answering questions in the chat, right? So you can use the webinar panel to expand or minimize that panel with the orange arrow. And feel free to ask any questions in the chat. Those questions will be answered throughout the webinar, and then at the end of the webinar, we'll have time for questions and answers where we may repeat that question for the whole group and get to what we can. So feel free to ask us questions along the way. All right, so, today we're talking about the site module, and there's a lot here. And because it's not related to your financial transactions, I think it's easy to overlook this module and what it can do for you and your company. And, today I'm going to talk about why that's a mistake to overlook this module and all the great opportunities for use in this module. Our goal at ENFOS, right, is information in context. And associated with the site within ENFOS, we can connect this type of data with all of your other data, like your financial data, right, or your technical data. So this is our use case, right? Finding where to store this information in a single system and where this additional metadata can be stored. This is what we are going to talk about today, right? This matches our modules and sections within ENFOS. They're all found under the primary module site. And if you're using ENFOS, you will have access to this module in some aspect. And, as we go through this is all related to user permissions. So if I'm showing you something today that you do not have access to, be sure to contact your ENFOS administrator, and they can double check your user account permissions and get you access where you need. I also want to talk about what we're not talking about today, because this is not every section and this is not every module in ENFOS. So we really explicitly have some topics excluded from today. Documents, additional information, activity calendar, and action items. And the reason for most of these are being excluded is because we've already had webinars on these specific topics. And I will start, when I log into ENFOS, I'll start on this page and show where those webinar links are. But we have specific webinars on these topics that really go in depth on the functionality for each of these topics. Now, the one exception is our activity calendar, and I anticipate that will be a future webinar topic. But our other topics listed here, those have been previous webinars, and they are available for you to review at any point. I'm using a demo system today. Anything I show is completely fictitious information. And I'm going to be at the site and the project or the AOC level today viewing information at an example site. We're going to log into ENFOS and take a look. All right, I am in my ENFOS system. This looks familiar. And I'm on my new tab page. And as promised, the first thing we are going to look at is our tutorial videos. And towards the bottom are some of these more recent webinar videos. So if you have a topic today that you want more information on that we've previously discussed, those links are available. After today's session, this will be available as well and listed here on this page. All right, here's our site module. This is what we're talking about today. And we're going to start with the end in mind. And I'm going to click on the PM desktop, let my page load, and I'm going to open it up here in full screen. So this page, this PM desktop, is often overlooked, but it's an amazing summary of your entire site or AOC. Either level, you can see this data. I would call this a one-pager. And on one page, a user can get a full summary of what's going on at their site or AOC. It's organized by ENFOS module. So at the top, I can see my project summary information, my contacts, documents, and notes. We're going to talk much more about notes and contacts in a moment. But all here, one page, very easy view, I get this information. As I scroll down on this page, I get to my finance section. And, depending on your access is going to depend on what you see here, of course. But I see my balance summary screens. I can view this information by work breakdown structure, right? My open commitments and available to commit specific to this project. As I scroll down more, I get my budget summary. ENFOS users will recognize this. The information for financials that we've looked at are very similar to the finance balance screen. But as I continue to scroll down, this is where I start getting into some pre-built charts. And a frequent request we get in ENFOS is charting and graphic outputs. And here we are, right on this PM desktop page. I have a graph by my work breakdown structure when I have planning dollars. I can download this information and have it report output just by going to this single page. There's no setup or configuration needed. There's more to this page, right? As I keep scrolling down, I have more and more financial information. Here's my total spend by my work breakdown phase, a roll up at this project. I have my open purchase orders, and this gives me a great summary of my purchase orders in my invoicing status. Keep scrolling, right? There's more and more life-to-date spending. And this shows me by year, my recent years, what my spending is by phase. Now, that's our financial information. It continues on for the other modules in ENFOS. If I'm using my technical data, I've got my sample point count. And I can do a quick lab data time series chart by entering a few simple drop-down menus. I can get a time series chart output. And also for compliance, I get my asset summary. So navigate to this page and look around. What's nice about this page is there's no risk. It's like a reporting output page that gives you a full summary of this project. See how it can help you and your team tell the story of what's going on at this AOC. And of course, this page is checking your user access and permissions. And I really love this page. I think it's underutilized. So I think this is a key takeaway for the webinar today is go to this page and see how it can help you and see how it changes as you change your projects or at the level in the hierarchy that you're at. All right, let's look at our address book. And as we look at the address book, this is going to associate with our contacts that we'll get into in just a moment. And I have my contacts here. I can add in a contact. And how is a contact different than a user? At our contact section here, I can add in both ENFOS users and ENFOS contacts. ENFOS contacts do not have a login to ENFOS. They cannot log into the system. They don't have a password. They don't have a permission group. It's truly just contact information. And when I look at my contacts section at either my AOC or my site level, I can see I have both users and contacts. And my contact here is my regulator. This person, Jane Regulator, does not have a login, but just I can see their email address, their phone number, and the company that they work with. It's really great to store this information for people who do not have ENFOS user accounts. Some examples we see would be property contact information, regulatory contacts, legal team contacts, stakeholders might be listed here in the contact section. Both user contacts that I have listed here, as well as non-users, can be used for information purposes. They can be used for reporting, including portfolio creation. We talk about that in our reporting webinar. And if you're using ENFOS BI connection, it can be used in that sense as well. So it's really great to have this contact information. When we get support questions like, how do I know all my open purchase orders for my sites? This is a common way where ENFOS knows which sites are your sites, right? We pull from this contact information. All right, we are going to skip down past documents into our finance settings section. And the finance settings are designed to help you tell a story at your AOC. By defining an AOC as baseload or the other two valid values, which are acquired or incremental, you can later report on reserve changes over time. So let me go over back into my PowerPoint and I will show how this can look as an output. All right, so baseload is our starting point. And we say at a line in the sand, this site is baseload, or this AOC is baseload. Acquired would be any new projects you've acquired since defining your baseload. And incremental would be new discoveries at existing sites or new sites altogether. When I look on my output, you can see that how this supports our story. We have a report and we ran it, and I created this chart on my reserve or my balance by financial setting type, including my totals here for both my reserve and my spend. Then I've charted this so I can tell a story, right? Here's my reserve or my provision based off of this remediation type by year. So in 2021, we can see it's all base load, but as the time goes forward, you can see some of my reserve is for incremental projects and more for incremental and acquired. So my base load is going down, but I am adding to my reserve for both incremental and acquired. And I can tell a similar story for my spend or my project count, right? That's what I'm looking at. Here's my project count. So it's a great way to tell a story at your AOCs and really kind of define them as either as the starting point, base load, or incrementally added or acquired. Let's go back into ENFOS. All right, my notes section. I think this is a best practice section, this notes. And if you're not using the notes section yet in ENFOS, I would strongly recommend to start using it. I think it's so simple. I think it provides so much value. And this is really a best practice within ENFOS. It's really functional and it's easy to use. It's a notebook associated with your AOC. Configuration is super simple. It's defining your note label types. And you can see here those note label types for me are these grade section headers. So I've got site strategic plan, I've got a project history, project review meeting notes, regulatory notes. We might also see things like monthly status update, site strategic plans. Oh, I've got that one in there. But for each one of my notes, I can add one or many notes over time. They are date stamped. You can define the contact, adding those notes. and you can have many, right? As I look at my project review meeting notes, I have a lot of information listed here. It's up to 4,000 characters. So it's actually a pretty big amount of notes that you can list. You can copy paste or type these out. And of course, you can import this data in bulk. So it's really easy to use. It's great functionality that can be used in reporting or a summary of your project and its history, all in one place. It's simple to use, and I would say take this one back to your team. I know our clients that are using this note section, it does provide a lot of value. Plus, there's a great report on this one, easy to report out. Let's keep moving down our page. All right, we have our Regulators section. And this section was originally designed to record your regulator information at this AOC level. It can be used in reporting and for information for the users who have access to this AOC. What's nice about this is it has some predefined fields available for your users. So I'm going to click Edit, and we can look at some of these predefined fields. They're not all required, right? Not all this information is required, but what's nice is you can list out your regulator information. It's kind of separate from what we looked at above in the contacts. This is more about the regulator region and agency, as well as potential responsible parties. Take a look at this and see if you like what's available and if it would be valuable for your team. If it makes sense for you and your use, you can start recording this type of information in ENFOS, and it's stored associated with this AOC. Really simple to use, not a ton of fields. But I think, just like any of these other sections we've talked about so far, it has a lot of value to record this information over time. All right, I've got another great section that I think it's underused, and we'll get support questions on this. And that's our history section. You can see I have no edit, I have no changing I do here. All of this is automatically recorded. And this is the history page. It's the similar history page that you'll see on a lot of pages within ENFOS. And it's the audit trail as to what's going on this page. You can see over time, there's been changes to this project, and those changes are automatically recorded in the history section. What's great is that it tells me things like when my project changed project managers. I can see the level of detail that pulls from this page listed here. It can help you walk back what's changed at this site or project over time. And it's available many levels and many sections within ENFOS. I know our admins sometimes will ask us questions on this, and they get those questions from the users, right, from you. And I would say always go to this history section first to see if it can help answer your question as to what changed, why it changed, who made that change. And it gives you a little bit more information. I think it's really valuable. We use this a lot on the ENFOS side, right? When we get support questions, we'll go to this history and check to see what has changed and when it changed. All right, that's the last section on our project level review of our site summary module. We're going to go up to the site level. And you may notice I've been using both project and site kind of interchangeably, as well as other terms, right? AOC or facility or store. We know that each one of our clients can name these levels different fields and have different values for each of those levels. As I'm at my site, the first thing you might notice in my site summary is my picture, right? It's not necessarily the map. And this is a great piece of functionality that ENFOS has that we see used occasionally, but I think, again, a really great practice is adding photos into our photo carousel here. And what this does is it gives us a really simple way to load the photos. and view this site. It's also a carousel, right? So I have my first photo here, but I can scroll through and see as many photos as I need loaded into my site. It's a really great way to visualize our site and really see what's going on there. So I love this. I think it's really great. It's really easy to load. I know once we all start traveling again, and maybe we already have some pictures of our sites on our phone, but it's easy to take those pictures and then load them up to ENFOS. Of course, you can always delete them too over time if that photo is no longer applicable. All right, as I look at my ENFOS standard fields here on this page, these really have such great value. And a lot of these fields were configured upon implementation. And I know our ENFOS administrative team, as well as their users, update this data over time. There's a few really key fields here. And that's this last modified by and last modified on field. And this is automatically recorded. So what's nice is you can see the last time this data has been updated. If you need to update some of this information over time, it automatically records it. It's also going to record it in the history section at the bottom of the page. So we have standard fields, and I have a lot of these fields enabled in my demo system here. You might see less fields, and that's because our administrators have a way to turn off unused fields. We talked about this a little bit in our a previous session, but we have our standard fields page, and that allows our administrators to turn off unused fields, and that can help with the content shown here. Now, what's the other side of that? Turning off unused fields is adding in new fields. And what I can see here right above my gray bar is I have some custom fields added to my site summary. And again, our administrators, you can add in custom fields with the custom answer type specific to any branch of your hierarchy to have more fields added, right? More metadata. And what's great about this, we talk about this in our additional information webinar quite a bit. It's a great functionality. It gives you a ton of options. You can import this data really easily, and you can pull that data in reporting. And it makes it really valuable for your users. It makes this section, this site summary section, much more like a custom page than as a configurable standard ENFOS page. I would say, especially for some of our clients that have been using ENFOS for a while, review this information. That's this the fields here and the metadata up at the top of the page. And is it serving you, and does it give you all the information you need? Do you want to track more information? Because there's ways to add more or remove unused fields. I'm going to just go down a little bit here and look at our vendor section. And this section is its unique subsection now. It always hasn't been its own subsection. For a while, it was included in that primary site summary section, but it is its own subsection. It does have its own permission related with it. The reason is this section may control user access, depending on the setup. So our client users, maybe take a look at this vendor section. Do you want all your users accessing this and editing this? It may be something to review. What's nice about our site level and our project level information is that there's a lot of similar fields on both levels. So we can kind of skip through some of these sections, right? We've previously talked about contacts. We have a whole separate webinar on documents. It's a great webinar, the document one. There's so much functionality within our documents submodule. But we are going to go to our points of interest. All right, so points of interest. We will also call this section by its acronym POI, and you'll see that when we get into our maps submodule. Today, we're going to talk briefly about maps, and that's going to be our last section that we'll discuss today. But these points of interest can be turned on in our map, and we can view this information on our map, and we can also view it here in this kind of table format. And what this does is it shows us points of interest, right, nearby our site. And this might be things like toxic sites, wells, hospitals, daycares, anything you'd like to know in the nearby area. You can add this information in a lot of ways, right? You can see I've got a new button right here on this page. So I can add something new right here and populate the required information. I can add this information on the map. We'll look at that a little later. And I can import this data. The table, right, is describing our nearby points of interest. It's valuable. It shows what's nearby, and it also has this kind of custom name. There are a lot of columns here, not all required. Some of it can also be verified, right? So there's a lot of content here. We'll see the output of this. We'll look at these actual points of interest when we get to our map, and we'll see this data on our screen. All right, let's keep working down our page. Next is our sensitive receptor survey section. And this section has a lot of different topics. So I'm going to use our drop-down menu, and I'm going to show the different topics, and I'm going to leave this section open. I'm going to read it down the list. I know that, my screen may be a bit small. So we've got our Aquifer Classification. This is probably our most used sensitive receptor section is the Aquifer Classification. We also have drinking water supply, ecological receptor, potential receptors, sensitive areas, and surface water body. So how is this used? ENFOS provides this topic, and then there are standard fields which the user can populate. This section is great to catalog information at the site, and it's standardized among all the sites. So the same information can be stored, collected, and reported. We have multiple reports for this section as well. We've got one specific for that aquifer classification, as well as a sensitive receptor site. I'm going to click edit on this information so we can see some of these standard fields. And I'm going to do a few different fields here because the information specific to each one of these sensitive receptor types changes based off of the item I select. So we'll first look at aquifer classification. And when I click this information, all of these fields here that I have listed are standard, right? These are the same everywhere within ENFOS, but things like our valid value list may be able to be, edited. We have not a lot of required information, right? Very, very minimal required fields here. A lot of it's optional. And as you can see on my page for this aquifer, it's only partially filled out because this is the data I have. All right, I'm going to click save on this. I actually did not edit anything. And we're going to go to another item, another type of sensitive receptor, and we'll see how that information is slightly different. So when I click edit for my drinking water supply, right, this looks vastly different than the aquifer classification I just looked at. This is my drinking water supply, and this allows me to record different types of information on public supply for well, public water intake, and private supply for wells in the nearby area. Really great to have this as available metadata fields and available for reporting. We will look at one other section. We'll go down to sensitive area, and we'll include that. Really simple, right? There's not a lot of required fields, but I think everyone viewing this can see how, it would be valuable to record this information if we have it associated with a specific site. And then, we could look at our full portfolio of sites and see what kind of data we can collect between all of our sites. All right, I'm going to click cancel. And I want to briefly talk about, our sensitive receptors and our regulators. I feel like these two sections in particular, they're really great fields within ENFOS. And they're the standard fields. So ENFOS kind of has these hard-coded fields where the users can enter it. And if you've attended some of our other webinars, I think I know what you're thinking about, the additional information. And ENFOS has really built out additional information, really strong, and has a lot of functionality. What we hear from some of our clients is instead of using the sensitive receptor survey as ENFOS has it, for maybe your aquifer classifications, maybe you set up something very similar in additional information as its own group. And that would be because you have similar but different requirements than what ENFOS has as their standard information required. And, we love to hear this feedback, right? And we love to help support our clients using ENFOS to the best that will work for them. So if you take a look at, I think really the Regulators Section, the sensitive receptor survey, and you like it, but maybe there's some gaps compared to what you're recording and what ENFOS has, we have some options, right? So that's where I would say reach out to your ENFOS administrator, reach out to us, and we can talk about, does it make sense to use these standard sections within ENFOS, or does it make sense to, utilize the additional information sections within ENFOS? They're both here under the site module. They both have, positives and negatives on how they can be used, and they're both really great functionality. So talking through these decisions and what to use where, we can absolutely help you with. But keep that in mind as you're reviewing the information on the standard fields in ENFOS, and keep in mind we do have those additional information options if what the standard fields in ENFOS don't match your needs completely. All right, and we are going to talk about our last section here at the site level, and then we're going to look at our maps, and that's the agreements. Kind of similar to the sensitive receptor survey. Within agreements, there are multiple types. I'll read this list again. We've got access, access/indemnity, indemnity, and claim. And what this agreements section allows you to do is record types of agreements you have at this site. You can see, I can tell you that access agreements are most typically stored and managed. That's the type most typically stored. The purpose of this section is that you can record all the information you need to note those agreements you have stored at this property. So let me click new, and we can look at some of these fields. There are a bit more fields here than some of the other pages. But again, it's to record this information and have this data stored with this site. There's things like dates, stakeholders, and notification information. And this is our access agreement. Similar to that sensitive receptor, these fields are hard-coded and they're standard. Context section, right? A lot of information here. I'm going to click cancel. If I went and I changed maybe over to a claim agreement, there's going to be different fields, right? And they're still ENFOS standard fields, but they're slightly different as it's specific to this claim. So keep that in mind. I would say take a look at each one, right? And go ahead and look at each one. You can do exactly what I'm doing on this page. Click edit, look at the available fields, see if they match the type of information you need to store. And if it doesn't, that's where we can talk more, right? That's where we can talk more and see where we can see or have a good fit within the system. There's a great import for this, so you can easily add in this agreement information. within ENFOS, and you can load that information in bulk for all of your sites at the same time. And there's a report already set up for this data. So it's really easy to, add in the user interface, add in an import, report out, or export this data. So it's a really easy to use section. And I think it provides really great information for the users that are working at this site. All right, let's talk about maps. I am going to go over to my maps page, and I'm going to let this page load. I want to make sure that that everybody can see, this page and that it's working well. We could do an entire webinar on maps, and we might, right? It might be a future webinar topic to talk about our map and the great functionality we have associated with maps in ENFOS. But since our maps are stored here under our site module, I wanted to do a very brief overview today. I love this page. I think it's a great way to visualize where our site is, what's going on here, and we've got some other functionality on here I want to make sure everyone is aware of. So I'm looking at my site, my demo site. It's the same site we've been on all day, and it's a single site. Just like any map program, right? I can zoom in and out. I've got my toggle between my satellite, my hybrid, and my map. And I've got my, my site marker right here in the middle, as well as my radius circles. I can use my site information in my right panel. I can edit my site. Let's say when I look at this, this is pulling the latitude and longitude from my site level, but I can actually edit this and I can move my site location if I needed to. Maybe it's a large site and I want to put my site marker right in the middle, or maybe I want to put it at the corner of the two streets where I think it belongs. I can slightly move that. It's really cool. It saves those edits. I can also define my radius circles on or off. If you remember one of my more recent webinars, we talk about the user preference module, and you can define if your radius circles are in miles or kilometers. And then you would see that output here on the map. This right panel also has my layers, right? Including some of the layers we talked about earlier today, like our POI, our points of interest. So if I add in my points of interest layers, I can see they start showing up on the map, right? Here's Rogers Park, and I can click that, and I get that information that we loaded in the points of interest. And, I can do that again and again. Here's a daycare, right? That I can see. And all of this information for the points of interest is loaded and available to be turned on my map. I'm going to also turn on my points of interest lines and my points of interest polygons. And I can draw on my map. Over here on my left side, I can draw lines and polygons. I can give it names. And you can see when I use my mouse and I hover over one of my polygons, this kind of green box here, I have my tank area 1 that I drew on my map, my little rectangle here. And this layer is available to use. So it's a great way, right, to visualize the map, to say, this is what's going on here. I can draw it on my map right now. I can delete this later. I can add in additional layers. I can define the colors, right? I can do all these different things. What this map doesn't do, right, is you're not building shape files within ENFOS. Those can be imported, right? You can import your shape data files and view those layers on the map just like any other layers, but you're not really building much more than kind of lines and polygons here. What we also can view on the map, and this gets into our data module, is our sample point location. And you can see when I enable my sample points, those sample point locations come up on my map as well. And I can see where my sample points are, kind of in relation to what else is going on at this site. So again, we're seeing this data in context, our site, our points of interest, our sample point location on our map, all together in one place. I'm going to take this satellite view, I'm going to toggle it over to our map view. Give that a second to load. And when I toggle between satellite and map, everyone's familiar with this, with using their map programs, but it still is really valuable. It changes though what we see. You can remember when I was viewing in the satellite, my tank area, it was very clear that I had some tanks kind of within that green polygon. And now that layer's off, it's not as clear, but the polygon's still there. So it still gives me that information. All right, so maps really nice. Also, if you haven't gone to the maps page, go in there, take a look, see how it can help you. Use the options here. It works like so many of these other map programs that you're already really familiar with. And you can turn your layers on and off. You can view your data, and it really works well when you've got your sample point latitude and longitude stored and your points of interest stored, etc. It gives you a lot of really great information. Keep in mind to view your site here on your map. In your site summary, you have to have this geocoded, right? You've got to have your latitude and longitude populated. And if you don't have that populated, ENFOS can pull that based off of your address and a geocode link in that site summary. But I do know, most of our users, you guys have either the address or the latitude and longitude. A lot of times you've got both options available. Okay, so we've covered our site module. We talked about some of these sections and subsections that are there. They're available for your use, and we hope that you find a lot of really great use for them, and we'd love to hear more. And Andrea, I'm going to open it up to you to discuss some of the user questions we've received along the way. All right, Andrea, I am not hearing you.
Hi, Torrie, this is George.
Hey, George, all right.
I'll step in and do some questions here while Andrea gets her audio figured out.
No problem. I appreciate the second to take a drink of water.
Yeah, so the first question we've got here is, I can't see the agreements section. Where is it? And it's down at the project level, but the reason that you might not see it is that it is controlled by a user privilege. So your user account type may not see the agreements section if you don't have that permission.
Exactly right. Exactly right. We've got and George, I think you said project. I'm here at the site level with the agreement section. Site
Yes.
level agreements. Yeah. Okay.
Another question here. Is there a way to keep my contacts updated in bulk if I need to update at multiple nodes?
Yeah, great question. Absolutely. And we know, right? Contacts change. I've got two options for this. And the first option can apply to a lot of this data at your site and AOC level. And that is, you start with a report. You run a report like your site information report and extract all of your current information. And maybe you delete all the columns except the ones you want to update, like your contacts. And then you update that contact information, and then you re-import it. And that adds new contacts. What that doesn't do through kind of the report export and then the re-import, it doesn't remove contacts. So our administrators, some of you know this, we've got an update, and this is really only available for our administrators, but we do have a contact bulk update. So, this can replace, this can remove, and this can add contacts, not only for my site and my AOC level, but also my financial contacts, right? So there's a lot of really great functionality for updating contacts over time. We hear this as a support question, right? You can tell as we have some functionality built within ENFOS for updating contacts. It's also great, you know, to go out to your users, maybe use one of those news flashes, you know, that the users see when they log in and say, update the contact information. You know, we're doing a push. We want to get this contact information updated. You know your sites, you know your AOCs, get that information updated for us.
Torrie, I believe there's also an import file to bulk update contacts under admin settings, contact operation.
We definitely have an import.
It's
You said,
under admin settings.
oh, right. Yes, yes, yes. Admin.
Admin contact operation.
Got it. We've got lots of functionality here to
Yeah, so
update our
this
contact.
import file works just like the update tool, except for it gives you a CSV file that you can build out.
Perfect. Keep those contacts updated. It's going to help with your reporting.
Speaking of reporting, can I use my summary information and contacts in business intelligence platforms like Power BI or Tableau?
Yeah, George, I'll let you answer that. I know you're our Power BI expert.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. You can absolutely use those in Power BI and Tableau. ENFOS has a OData API where we allow you to access your ENFOS databases through your preferred reporting provider, like we use Power BI internally. And if your contacts and summary fields are updated, you can use those to build and query custom reports. So absolutely, those fields can be used. There are data sets specific to the site module, both at the site and project level, available for use. How do I add more valid values if I don't see what I need in the site or project summary?
Yeah, great question. We'll use ownership as an example, right? I've got a valid value here and I've got some options. And, you know, if I'm not seeing what I need, or maybe my terms have changed over time, our ENFOS administrators, right, your primary ENFOS support administrator can update this. You can add new valid values, you can deactivate historic valid values, and you can edit existing valid values, you know, if the name has slightly changed. So we always say these valid value lists are your valid values. And if those terms are not matching the terms you need to, you know, correctly identify any of the fields, that's where you contact your ENFOS administrator and they can update that information.
The next question is very similar. How can I turn site fields on and off, and can I make them mandatory?
Yeah. And we kind of briefly alluded to that. This is in the standard field section. Again, ENFOS administrators would have to do this, but this is where we can say if these fields are visible or not visible, and if any of those fields are mandatory. It's really great functionality to allow you to really configure that site or AOC summary into exactly how you want it to work.
Question about notes here. Can you show me where the bulk note import is?
No problem. I'm going to go there and then I will talk about it, how I got there. All right, I am under administration transfers file import. And this is where I can import that note information. My module is site and my type is actually historic notes, but they don't actually have to be historic. If I toggle over to my import format, I see that import format, I can download it with, you know, all the details I need. I told you it was pretty easy. I mean, this whole thing is 6 columns. So very simple import to get that note information loaded in bulk. And these valid values lists, just as that previous question suggested, those are defined by our clients, right? So you would define the label types for your notes.
Next question, Torrie, is about maps. Can I load and show shape files for my site on the ENFOS maps?
Yes, the answer is yes. Those shape files are created outside of ENFOS. They can be loaded. It is under the administration module. So, contact us and we can help walk you through getting that content loaded into ENFOS. And then it would be another layer, right? Just like these other layers we see, it would be another layer that you can turn on and off.
I have one more question here, Torrie. Actually, two more. Can you show the difference between a contact versus a contact that also has a user account?
Or, yeah. Let me go back to my project level here. Okay, I'm back to my contact section. And there's a few things that let me know the difference. And one is my little icon here in email. And I have two rows that have icons, and the middle row here does not have an icon. That lets the rows with icons are ENFOS users. The row without an icon is not an ENFOS user. I also know that, if I click this information here, I see kind of very basic information for my contact. If I click on my user, I also have that information, but I have one more button. I have my view details, and that takes me to my actual user detail information.
I see one more question, Torrie, and it's from an employee user. Above the site level, my site module looks different. What is this?
Sure. Absolutely. So here I am at the AOC level. I've got my AOC or my project summary. I'm going to go up the hierarchy, right? As I go to my site level, I see my site summary. And let's go up one more level. Here I am at Ohio. And all of a sudden, there's still data here, right? But it looks different, just as the user suggested. And this is more of a roll-up reporting level. Data is not really stored too much here. We've got our node name. We do have a comment box, but here I get a kind of a summary of what's going on from this state and below, and of course what I have access to. And what's nice about this section that I'm showing here is it's really configurable. And I think we could have a whole webinar really on these kind of summary reporting levels. So I'm not going to get too deep into it right now. But this gives, roll-up level reporting. I can filter that. I can add in different information by using the buttons here. What's nice about this is it's reporting output, right? So I really can't screw anything up here. It's just defining the output I'm seeing. So this is actually available at all these levels above my site and my project. And some of that will configure my chart and my map here below that table. I do have certain fields like contacts and documents that can be stored above my site and project level. I would say for most of our clients, they are not using this information above the site level. And as always, we've got the history section. So there is some fields and some information, but it is more limited and it's more kind of related to roll-up information.
We had one more question come in, Torrie. And it's about additional information, actually. If I need to store more fields in my summary section, do I do that with additional information, or is there another way?
Yeah, great question. The answer is it's additional information. And I would recommend joining and not joining, but watching the webinar, the previously recorded webinar on additional information. We talked about this quite a bit, but I'm in my site summary. I clicked edit And you can see, because I have this configured, I have this section kind of lower on the page, and it's called additional information. And all of these fields and the answer types, everything we see here was set up and defined to be available at the site summary level. And it has its own kind of access and kind of permission related here is related within our site summary. But it allows me as an ENFOS super user to add in these fields. When I view it as a user, if I'm editing, it does kind of have this subsection here towards the bottom of the page. But when I view it, if I view this information, that additional information subheader is not there. And it really is kind of all on the same page here. It's great functionality. I think it's really awesome. And we would love to help you use that and enable this functionality. It's there, it's ready for you to use whenever you're ready to use it. All right, George, should we wrap up?
Yeah, that was the final question.
Excellent. Everyone, thank you for your time today. As always, send your questions over to your ENFOS administrators, and they will pass those on to us. Thank you for attending. We hope this was valuable.